All right, here we go. Welcome back to 83 Till Infinity. This is Disco Trek, our Star Trek Discovery podcast. Today we're talking Season 3, Episode 7. Title was Unification 3. Director was John Dudkowski, and the writer is Kirsten Beyer. Oh boy. Oh boy.
Oh boy, indeed.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh boy.
Should we start with the scores, Bert?
Yeah, let's start with the scores. Alex, what'd you give this one?
I gave this a 6, which I think is a pretty reasonable thing. And then minus 10 for the on-screen sex that I have been worried about would happen. So my final score is -4.
-4. All right. Alex?
That's my middle name, so I'll respond to it.
Oh, sorry, Jesse.
I give it an A for grade A turd.
And numerically,
I give it a 2.
2.
I'm giving it a 2.
All right.
Yeah.
That's us.
As in better than watching like reruns of Castle.
Yeah.
But
Is this better
I
than
don't like
watching
that
Castle?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. I might
gave it
watch Castle.
I gave it a 3.
no, I don't know. That's not Nathan Fillion's best outing. I don't like Castle.
It's I don't like it either, and I think that might be better than this.
Yeah, I really dislike this.
Yeah.
I gave it a 3.
Definitely watch The Mentalist before I watch this.
Yeah, me too.
A 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. That makes sense. That's a good score. I
That's
like that.
A strong 3.
I think that 6 must have hurt Alex.
Yeah.
I don't think you give this episode a 6 comfortably.
Okay.
That's got to be.
If I have to give it a real number, then 0 because of on-screen sex. I just penalize on-screen sex by a very large margin. So
Okay.
0.
I just thought, but we'll get into it. Let's talk about prediction pool update. So one prediction from our previous episode was I said, and this was a joke, that they are telegraphing that Tilly is going to be made first officer because if you remember, they showed her, for 6 seconds in one episode working really well with the new technology and giving orders to some random person who was walking by, and that was accurate. That 6-second scene was showing that she was leadership material. That's all they did to show that.
I think right after you said that, it was like, oh my God, you're right. Like this is exactly what they're trying to telegraph here.
Yeah.
When he took her aside and they did that, like, you forced her into it. She's forced you into what you're doing. Like, I was like, oh yeah, no, Bert's right. Yep.
Yeah.
Saru's a terrible captain.
Oh yes.
I mean, this guy's making bad decisions. An ensign. We're gonna make an ensign. Ensign Tilly, you're first officer now, and not like an ensign that was demoted because she was a terrorist, like Ensign Rowe or something. Like Ensign Rowe used to be Commander Rowe, right? Like, or Lieutenant Commander Rowe, and then was demoted because she's I guess the Michael Burnham of her era. She just couldn't stop doing bad things. But Tilly is just an ensign, like a really green ensign too.
Yeah.
Imagine all the people on the ship who had like worked their entire careers towards like being a first officer, which is like the precursor to being captain. And then they give it to the ensign who has never had a meaningful contribution to the ship.
Yeah.
It must just be, just like, oh, that was Michael Burnham's bunkmate. That's why she got, that's how she even got in front of the captain in the first place.
Like she was a cadet.
I hate it.
A cadet 2 years ago.
Yeah. She started as a cadet trainee during the war on the ship.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. I mean, I guess they telegraphed it in the first season because in Terran in the Mirror universe, she was a captain.
Right.
She was Captain Tilly.
Captain Killy.
Captain Killy. That's right.
They tried to get away from this by having that sequence where she's like, I haven't even passed the command training, and Saru's like, oh, well, that's okay because we did something really hard.
Yeah.
And you know what? Like, that's just not true. Like, going through a really hard traumatic thing does not instantly turn you into leadership material. It definitely tests your mettle, and we saw many of the bridge crew were found lacking after they saved the universe a couple of times, so it wasn't like it was easy times, but I wouldn't put it would be like putting Stamets obviously shouldn't be in charge, but it would be more like putting Detmer in charge. It's like, you know what, Detmer, you did great piloting. Now you're the commander. It's like, well, what about all those times where she clearly had PTSD and made bad decisions? It's like, we should probably not have her in charge.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's absolute insanity. And I know I've complained about the military style, just ignoring the chain of command. And I find it frustrating because like Jesse said, these people have been working years and years and years to get into these positions. To just get pulled out because you're friends with Michael Burnham is ridiculous.
Yeah. And if you
remember, I think it's...
Go ahead, Jesse.
Sorry. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you remember that scene where Saru offers her the first officer position and she responds by saying that, are you crazy? I'm just an ensign. I was a cadet 2 years ago. Right. He says, you have been through such a difficult experience. You traveled 1,000 years into the future to save the universe. But that's a silly argument to make because literally everybody on the ship traveled 1,000 years into the future. The janitor, the cook, everybody traveled into the future to save the universe.
No, I know. It's like he said. I put that in my notes today because I was like, it bothered me that he was like, oh well, maybe you don't deserve it, but you traveled through time, and I thought so did everybody else on the ship that deserves the position more than her.
Yeah, anybody that's been through command training for a couple of years also went 1,000 years in the future and should probably be in charge.
Yeah.
Yep.
Even just this season, what has Tilly done to show her mettle as command material? In the second episode, the first time we see her this season, she goes into the future saloon. They get into a bar fight and she hides behind the bar. That's pretty much her entire contribution. While Georgiou,
she couldn't even put her whole leg over a chair when she was sitting down, for God's sakes. How can she be a number one? Right.
Yeah, it seems very, very silly. And it's sort of, well, I'll get into what I think it sort of is meant to signal to the audience when we get into episode chat. Main character deaths. I don't think there were any this episode. No, there weren't. Resurrections and cameos. We got a Spock cameo from a TNG clip, which was a bit odd because who was taking that video?
And, it was from Picard's that was from Picard's archives.
Yeah,
but
we got a JL reference.
But Alexa, right? They're taking holographic pictures of everybody at all times, all the time, right? Is that what's happening? Is this like a translation thing? It's always on. You're always getting digitally. Because I agree with you, it was rather poignant to have it. It was. It was a nice sequence. It
was video. That's what made it strange to me. If it was just the audio, then I would have been like, okay, that makes sense. They record everything, via their communicator or something. But it was literally they were playing the camera angle video from the episode as though there was an ensign there with a camera just filming the entire thing. Yeah. Okay, sure, why not? Whatever, who cares? And we also got a Mama Burnham cameo.
Right. What's the actress's name from The Wire? I forget her name.
I don't know. I just remember
she's incredible.
Her character from The Wire.
Oh man, yeah,
she's a great actress.
She is
I hate talented. The inclusion of her character here. I just kind of feel like it's like, hey, it's mom, right? And we're gonna go to this meeting, and her mom's part of the what's the name? I want to say Jat Vache, but those are the anti-AI Romulans, but the absolute candor. Yeah, that's right. And they're kind of a cool sect that got made up for Picard, I guess.
They did, yeah.
So they could have an episode with his elf son.
Right.
Elnor, which really does sound like an elf name.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, yeah, it is. He is the elven warrior that accompanied Picard's questing party to stop the bad guy Romulans. But yeah, I didn't like. I thought that was just sort of like a random thing where they're like, we should have her mother, and her reaction to her mother is kind of like, Mom, and then like 2 seconds later everything's just normal, and we're like, we're gonna go to this meeting together, and then she hugs her, and it's like, you didn't think you'd see her again.
Yeah.
Like, she disappeared into the future, and she shows up, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
Great. You want to get lunch?
Yeah. It was just, it was so inconsistent. Everything about it was inconsistent. The mother shows up, the Mama Burnham shows up, and it's this joyful reunion. I thought you were dead. I never thought I was going to see you. Oh, I just, I was waiting for you to come to New Vulcan so that you could whatever, and then we'd meet up then. Sure, whatever. But at the same time, the Vulcans, they're going to Vulcan. So if you remember on the bridge when the hologram shows up.
Well, it's Navarre now, Bert.
Sorry, they go to Navarre.
Let's just be correct. It's called Navarre.
Yes, it's called Navarre. They go to Navarre. And the president of Navarre shows up in the hologram, and Michael Burnham puts on her sort of old season 1 Vulcan raised persona and sort of behaves in a Vulcan fashion. But then her mom shows up, and immediately they're walking down the hallways of Discovery, arm in arm, like her arm is around her back, and they're like hugging, and I'm like, okay, like, which way are we going here? Like, are you, the really serious person who compartmentalizes everything and will hug your mom back when you're in your quarters? Or are you, the always emotional, maverick from the previous episodes? Like, it's just, I don't know if the writers sort of never met one another and they all just write their episodes in isolation and then just go, but it's just all over the place.
She's an inconsistent character that only serves the needs of the story. Like, this week we wanted to be a Maverick. Next week we wanted to be a Vulcan. And in all cases we wanted to fail at being whatever we wrote her to be. Well, this season, another season, she's great. Season 1, Burnham's great, like really well written. The first season was interesting. And again, this is just bad writing all over the place.
Yeah.
Go watch The Mandalorian, everybody. Go watch it right now. Get a Disney Plus subscription. Dump CBS.
Just subscribe.
Forget about Star Trek.
You don't need CBS.
If you bought DVDs, throw them in the garbage.
Yeah.
If anyone buys DVDs anymore.
So last 2 categories for prediction updates. What is the burn? I guess we got some new details about the burn. Is that it has a trajectory, which we sort of knew last episode and was confirmed, I guess, expressly or explicitly in this episode, that it had a starting point. So it began somewhere and emitted in I guess, every direction through space. And Captain Watch, Saru is still captain, but I mean, who knows? Maybe
Tilly next week?
He goes on an away mission and he gets capped, and Captain Tilly next week.
Captain Tilly next week.
Captain Tilly to the rescue. It's going to be fantastic. Okay, episode chat. Why don't you go first, Alex?
All right, I'll go first. I know we already made fun of Tilly being the first officer, so we don't need to dwell on that. I mentioned this last week, and I won't dwell on it. The on-screen sex is absolutely, it's just not for me. I really, really, really did not care for it. Mm-hmm. I feel like the relationship is forced. I don't like that if you are an attractive female, you have to have an attractive man of the same race as your love interest. Mm-hmm. I don't like any of these things. It just really bothers me. It feels like you're checking boxes, not like you're trying to make an interesting character. Oh, she's a powerful woman. She must have a love interest. Again, not going to dwell on it.
Well, I mean, like, there might be a lot of like male fans out there who would be uncomfortable if she was with a white man.
I mean,
they'd be worried about. They'd be worried. They're like, so what's going to happen? Is there no white race in the future? Was it white genocide? Are all the white people gone?
I mean, I think her family might. I mean, there's a lot of. I mean, I have a lot of issues with whenever you have a female lead, they always do this every single time. I feel like I teach it at writing school or something. Like, you have to do this, and it just bothers me. But the first thing I wanted to talk about, now that I've talked about three things, is the thing that Bert just alluded to when they were talking about the math of trying to triangulate. And Tilly has a short sequence where she thankfully points out that in three-dimensional space, like triangulating is not going to work. Like, on a 2D plane, triangulation works. And I thought that, like, here's some science fiction writers who actually sat down and thought triangulation, and then we're like, wait a second, triangulation doesn't work in space. So I just want to say kudos to them. I think that of all of the science fiction-y, mumbo jumbo that they say, when they use something that we actually use every day on Earth, it's nice that they try and like give it to something that every watcher of this has seen CSI, and they know, you got 2 cell phone pings, and that's how you find where the murderer was. But like, it obviously can't work in space. like there's a Z-axis. It's something that Star Trek is historically extremely bad at, is remembering that there's another dimension. And not to talk about too much about other shows, but like Battlestar Galactica, The Expanse. Battlestar Galactica does an incredible job of reminding you that space is three-dimensional, and so does The Expanse. Like, all of the military sequences, they're complicated by having that 3D space. And again, so I just thought that the Star Trek guys, tossing it out there. I know this is like the easy sci-fi. It's the soft sci-fi where we don't have to worry about inertial dampeners and G-forces, but I still thought that it was a nice toss out to the annoying nitpicky people like me.
So I agree, but there's one sort of in canon thing that I would like to point out that this sort of overlooks. I'm going to throw out one name, or I guess one person, 3 names. Khan Noonien Singh. Khan thinks in 2 dimensions, but Starfleet officers think in 3. And so
right.
Starship battle strategies are not his forte, because obviously he was not trained to think that way. Whereas everybody you meet on the Discovery was, although the audience was not. So this is a discussion between really the officers of Discovery and the audience. I guess they assume that all of the audience is going to say, you should be able to triangulate and find the exact point of origin. But it's sort of strange that the chief science officer would suggest triangulation and have to be corrected by an ensign. Like, what are you talking about?
Who outranks her, Bert? There was a reason Tilly outranks her.
I mean, if your chief science officer on a spaceship is like, oh, we can triangulate now, and it has to be corrected by an ensign in a universe where we've already been taught explicitly by, ostensibly this same series of works, that everybody who's in Starfleet is trained to think in 3 dimensions. Is she, I don't know, like how did she become a science officer and then a chief science officer? And how is she able to come up with all of this science that over and over again saves the entire universe? And then, a basic, 3-dimensional physics problem, she immediately jumps to the most incorrect answer. Like, I understand you want to give a nod to the audience, but I don't know if it matters that the audience was going to think, if the audience immediately thought, they should be able to find the exact purpose. The way that they explained the answer to the audience was crazy to me, because they should have just said, obviously, we're in 3-dimensional space, and we're going to need far more data points to find the exact origin, and move on from there. But throwing out triangulation as a suggestion just made Burnham seem like a dummy, and that was unfortunate.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like, I kind of felt like they didn't need to talk about it, because it was one of those things where I thought I was always just assuming that you were using, your technology to triangulate these types of things in space and, in a 3-dimensional space. And you'd think that it's not like those ships were all on one plane where it's like a ship here, a ship here, a ship here. and they should all be like, one's up here and one's down here. You know what I mean? Like they should be all from different. Like there should be a way to kind of figure it out. Yeah. But I think Alex is right. It's probably a conversation with the audience just to be like, see, we thought about
something. Yeah, exactly.
This show, we're not lazy writers because we thought about the fact that space isn't flat.
Yeah.
Right.
We deserve a pat in the back for that.
And on that point, Jesse, like I think my biggest problem watching this show is it feels like every scene is them apologizing to the audience or them like knowing what the comment section is going to look like and trying to head it off. It's not them writing stuff that they find interesting or compelling or making the characters do what the characters they wrote should do. It's a lot of the time them realizing that they've made a mistake or they're about to make a mistake and then like giving the audience like again like with so many things, even just this episode where they start talking about how dilithium was actually a scarce resource before the burn because now they've realized that they've accidentally written like 3 or 4 major problems and they're reading Reddit and then they're seeing the problems and then they're correcting them in later episodes and that it's different than lazy writing. It's sort of like it's just I don't know, like lack of courage, like lack of vision, like just we've talked about this before. Like science fiction is doing what ifs. What if dilithium blew up and all spacefaring people stopped? Great, that's very interesting. Now what we're talking about is triangulation and whether or not dilithium was a scarce resource before or after, and how many ships and how many planets were involved in the Federation. The Federation was too big. None of this is interesting what ifs to me personally. I don't know what the writers are aiming a lot of these corrections at because it's not going to stop the critics like us from watching it every week and then being like, well, that was like, we spent 5 minutes on triangulation. That doesn't seem like a good investment.
Well, and it's like, I think like the other thing I noticed that I think they try to do sometimes is like, like for like one of the things that attracts me to stuff like Star Trek is, like in my personal life, I'm a progressive, right? So, you have sort of like progressive futurism that these shows do. This show does none of that. Instead, what they do is they're like, we'll have a bunch of progressive-ish characters. And we'll load the show up with people who look like they're like, like a really, diverse cast on racial, gender, sexual, whatever grounds, right? And we're going to have all these different people, and so you're going to like it because if you're a progressive and you're attracted to progressive ideas and stuff, well, you've got to like this because it's full of diversity, and it's like okay, that's great, right? Diverse cast, check, right? The other stuff isn't happening there. None of this like I think that's the thing is that Star Trek was progressive in the sense that it would ask us really interesting what ifs, right?
Right.
It's a what if show, right? And it's a show that forces us to sort of look at ourselves and how we deal with things. This show does none of that at all. And it's every week they keep doing things that are different and they're trying to, I guess, explore like what they think are cool ideas. What if the Romulans and Vulcans did get together? But then they just make it so boring. They don't deal with any of the issues that you'd like to see teased out by unification, right? Like, like what would have been really cool is if you got to Navarre and it turns out that like the Romulans are second-class citizens and the Vulcans are basically like ethno-Nazis. And it's like, cool, right? Like their Vulcans are awful, right? The Romulans were better off on their own. This is terrible, right? And then you have a conversation about racism or something. I don't know, right? Like you think that would write itself. But instead they're like, how about they go to like a really interesting situation on a planet where you think you're going to, like if this was a TNG episode, Picard would go down and there'd be some like legal crisis and he'd meet with them and he'd make an impassioned speech in front of the Vulcan Romulan Senate or whatever. And it would be really interesting. Here they're like, what if it was just about her getting data, right? Because she needs a flash drive from them and she's got to go to the planet and it's all about her emotions and about her mom basically testing her in front of everyone else. And her coming to like this personal realization in front of people during a tribunal. Wait, I do belong on this ship. Gee willikers. And you're just like, this is not the time. You're here for a professional thing. And you're like, gee, Mom, thanks. I do belong in Starfleet.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
you know what? Maybe make Tilly first officer.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Okay, so the last thing that I wanted to talk about briefly is I know we mentioned how terrible Saru is from a military command point of view, which is absolutely, I mean, horrible. But from a Star Trek captain point of view, as in he is always selling. Like the first second conversation he has with Navarre, it's like, hey, so if we come back later, would you consider joining the Federation? He's every person that Saru has walked into, every single person, they have been like, he's been like, you know what, we should come back and chat again with the Trill. He clearly recruited them, and it looks like he's made a lot of progress on recruiting Navarre as well.
Yeah.
So I just have to say, like, that part of the Starfleet captain, the always selling to cool aliens. I mean, I think that's something that he does very well.
They got to get him some business cards.
They do. Like he I feel like he would hand them out and like buy people mojitos. I don't know what business people buy these days.
And
Old fashions. I don't know.
He needs business cards and vacuums. Because he would sell the crap out of vacuum. Every one of these presidents, we would just sell him a vacuum.
Yep,
it's like, join the Federation and this vacuum can pick up a bowling ball. You ever seen that before? You need this. And they'd buy it.
But he is selling the Federation hard, and that is something that I really like to see, just because I really want everyone to be in the Federation. I want to be like, I want like Picard, like everyone that Picard talks to, they're always like, oh yeah, the Federation's great, like universal, as Jesse was saying, like progressive futurism, like every resource is post scarcity economy. Everyone has what they want, so you can you can achieve like peak society, and I want that for Navarre, and I want that for the Trill. I want that for everybody, and I think like that's what Saru is selling. Now, background of that, or like behind the scenes on that, there is still the burn, and apparently a dilithium storage, and a whole bunch of other things that make the universe sound very, very scary right now. But I do appreciate Saru always selling the Federation.
Yeah, get that Kelpian some business cards. Okay. Jesse, you want to go next?
Sure. Okay. I mean, general comment. I like that they called this Unification 3. If only it was as good as Unification Parts 1 and 2. But I at least like the callback to the classic two-parter Trek episode from TNG. It's a good episode. I really like that episode. I even have the the Playmates line made a Spock action figure in his like outfit from that episode, and it was the first Spock action figure I bought because I liked that episode so much. And I remember being like, I'm gonna buy this Spock. So I do have that. I have that Spock.
Nice.
I will say this too. I did like the Navarre concept in general. I do think this is one of the first things where I think like thinking out how the future would look actually makes sense, because it was set up in the next generation, and saying, look, in 1,000 years from now, maybe especially because of the destruction of Romulus, which, is a stupid thing that J.J. Abrams left us with, but nevertheless, like they soldiered on with it in universe. But because of that, and because of the unification effort that already existed, I think this makes a lot of sense. I think it's neat to see that, but I mean, again, this is where the show fails us consistently. It's a really interesting idea to see the Romulans and Vulcans united, and we don't really get to see any of that.
Yeah.
We see them as this sort of like monoculture where it's like someone's Vulcan and someone's Romulan, but we've combined our emblems so that the eagles got the Vulcan symbol in the middle of it, and that's about it. But you don't really see any of the there's not a lot of, I guess, conflict between them, or there's sort of like no interplay. We're just not getting any information on what's happened. What does unification mean for these two species? So I think, again, this is why this show is such a failure, because they don't like that. That would have been a really interesting thing. We could have had. There's all kinds of conversations we could have had with unifying two previously segregated species that are really the same species, sort of. So yeah.
Just a point on that. like just to sort of build
Sure.
on that, I think that
Make points, yeah.
I think that like part of me is starting to feel like maybe the Star Trek formula does not lend well. It doesn't mesh well with serialized content, because those are all the interesting stories that we want to see, right? Like they're sort of driving past. It's almost as though you're in like a it's a small world, like a drive-by sightseeing sort of Star Trek menagerie where you get to see all of the places where interesting things are happening, but you can't look at any of them too closely because you need to get to the end of this road that you're on, right? That you have to get. They have this main plot that drives the entire season, and everything else is just sort of window dressing. So they can't spend an entire episode or a large part of an episode exploring, what does it mean to have Vulcans and Romulans living on the same planet in an integrated society? What does it mean to have Trill, who, they are running out of the symbiote like hosts, and it's sort of destroying the society that they've built throughout the history of their people? What does it mean to have a dilithium shortage when people who can't get off planet, or someone who, his family has lived on this star base for centuries, perhaps, waiting for somebody from Starfleet to show up and nobody ever showing up. And then one day they get the call. I mean, if more than 2 minutes of that would have been fantastic. But they can't give it to us because this mega plot of the burn, and Michael Burnham has to figure out how the burn happened, has to drive everything. And I mean, even the burn itself would have been an interesting plot device to slow down Star Trek, right? So what would happen if, for some period of time, Starfleet was stuck somewhere and could only move at, slow speeds, or maybe they could go to warp, but resources were scarce. How does it change the dynamic? What are the difficulties for communication or bringing in supplies? But they can't talk about any of that because, it has to be resolved by the end of the season. It's not a new status that everybody has to act within. It's just a temporary problem that has to be solved by the hero by the time we reach episode 12 or 13 or whatever it is this year. And I think that maybe it just doesn't work as well that way.
I mean, I certainly think that they're struggling to make it work. I mean, I prefer Star Trek as episodic content, and that's the way I like to take my Trek. I'm open to it being serialized. I just think that, again, I mean, I'm comparing it to The Mandalorian because The Mandalorian is so good. The Mandalorian is serialized, but it also takes time to make really good episodic content, right? Like the Mandalorian has a story arc that covers, each season about getting the child here or doing this thing, but then they have really good episodes where they've just taken the time to say, okay, this episode is part of the quest, we're coming to this planet, but they take the time to make you feel like you're inhabiting that space.
I agree.
They're exploring it a little bit in a way that is interesting, like this, not, again, just to compare it, like this week's Mandalorian episode, I think, which is chapter 13. They go to this, the Mando and
spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Yeah. Mando and Grogu. Yeah. Grogurt. That's what I want. It's so close to Mel Brooks's character from Spaceballs. Anyway, but Grogu and Mando go to, they go to this planet, and, I'm not going to give away anything, but at least you kind of get to see like what's going on the planet, and they don't give you a lot of details.
Yeah.
But you get you kind of get a feel for what's happening in this space on Corvus, right? You understand, oh, look, there's sort of like Corvus is this burnt out place. It looks like somebody, like a warlord's taking it over. We kind of get to see the warlord. We get to be in the space. And here I feel like we always get taken, like, I think the way you described it is excellent. I feel like a kid who's on like a road trip, and what you're really going to do is like, we're going to grandma's house, right? But we're going to drive through Las Vegas and Disneyland on the way there, but we're not letting you get out of the car.
Yeah.
And you're going to get to see all the fun, shiny lights and everything from a distance, but we're never letting you go beyond the glass. And this is the worst, because in this episode, you see Navarre, or, which is Vulcan, you see Vulcan outside, this outside the window.
Yeah.
And it's just tantalizing. And it's like, it's almost like there's almost this imagery where it's like our stupid human drama on this ship is so important that it's overshadowing what's outside the window, and we're actually completely ignoring this super interesting thing outside the window. This, it's just at every turn, this is just the worst show ever. And it wasn't in its first season. In its first season, I felt like Discovery paused to let you smell the roses. They let you see what the Klingons were like. They let you kind of reimagine the Klingons and what their culture and society looks like. And it was really, really fun to watch, even if some people didn't like it for other reasons, like, it didn't feel like canon or the Klingons didn't look right or whatever. At least it was interesting, and I was engaged. This is just, no one's taking any time anymore. Maybe all the good writers went to work on the other spin-off shows like Picard and, the new Anson Mount Star Trek Pike one or whatever. Yeah. So maybe all the people who were writing this show before and who were doing a good job, like especially in the first season, got shuffled off to other projects.
Maybe.
No, I think what you said though, I think the real thing that is happening here is that there isn't enough space when it's episodic. Like I do think that is really like if it was episodic, like there would be enough space to look at these things, because then you could ignore the 8 minutes we spent having on-screen sex, or like the 4 minutes we have with Tilly, like if we, instead of that stuff, we just cut all of the, like you said, drama, the intership drama, then we would have enough time to have another 10 minutes about why the Vulcan sects are split the way they are, and what unrest in the province, they allude to like unrest in the province because of something, like, oh, okay, cool, like, I mean, there clearly would be unrest, but like, what is going on there?
Yeah.
I got it. This is Melrose Place. We're watching Melrose Place. I mean, they never go anywhere. They're always hanging around the stupid pool, and it's just drama for no reason. It's just to keep people who want to see what's happening tuned in every week. What's Tilly gonna say to Michael Burnham when she finally has to tell her she got promoted to first officer?
Right.
What's Billy gonna think? Check it out next time.
Yeah.
I was gonna call it Gossip Girl because I'm hip, and.
I didn't watch Gossip Girl. I know the Melrose Place.
Yeah,
references.
I mean,
I've watched it.
I think Gossip Girl is like 20 years old at this point. Though,
yeah,
so
I was like,
I think I'm not hip.
Yeah, I think none of us are hip, and even if we were, we would not be anymore because we said the word hip.
Yeah.
I watched Emily in Paris. Is that hip?
I don't think so.
I feel like it's new on Netflix.
Okay.
It's about a girl who goes to Paris.
She named Emily.
I'm cool. Still cool. I'm almost 40, but I'm cool. We're all almost 40. Yeah. We're all born in the same year.
That's true.
Oh,
hey, that's because of the name of this podcast. Yeah. 83. Get it?
Funny how that works.
So I mean, I think what I guess the last thing I'll mention is, I mean, I just hate that Tilly. We've already kind of, like, we started by talking about this. But it's just stupid. It's stupid that Tilly is the acting first officer. The fact that the whole criteria for her being selected as well, she's like, hey, I'm not qualified. And Saru's like, Chili. It's at 1340 if you're looking for it, Bert.
Okay.
He's like, Chili, you just traveled through a wormhole into the future. I think you're qualified. To which everyone else on the ship who was more qualified than Tilly, probably would have replied, we all went through the wormhole, dingus. You know what? Philippa, teach us how to cook Kelpian.
Yeah.
Because we're having us a spit roast tonight.
Yeah.
And then I guess I just
all over the place.
I hate it so much.
Yeah.
Roll his justification.
Okay, I'm gonna play it now.
That poor actress.
I would like you to serve as my acting first officer until I find a permanent replacement.
Sir, what? I never completed the command training program.
You traveled through a wormhole 930 years into the future. I am confident in saying your experience now exceeds the parameters designed for the command training program.
Again, everybody on the ship did that. Yeah. Everybody on the ship.
When they find out, when they find out she's going out an airlock.
Well, no,
What happened to Tilly? I don't know.
I mean,
she
you
wasn't
didn't
watching
see-
herself from
they
the
find
airlock.
out at the end.
Stamets throws her a party
They're like, say
because
yes.
Yeah,
Stamets
no,
is
I
a
know.
nice person now.
No, but when they find out like what he based it on.
Yeah.
But actually, here's your moment of Zang. Go to 3150, and I choose to think that whole thing ended in my canon, and I'm making my own now.
Mm-hmm.
There was no party at the end, and this is the only interaction she gets from a crew member about her promotion.
Oh yeah. Okay, here
This
we go.
is
Honestly, the notion of taking orders from you is deeply, deeply weird, almost disturbing.
oh man, when they did this, I was like, you know what? I'm okay with her being acting first officer because Stamets hates it, and he thinks it's disturbing that he should have to take orders from this idiot. And then when later he threw the party, I was like, well, then why did you call it disturbing? Like, I was hoping this was his real reaction.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
I choose to think this is canon for me now. This is
That's
where
fair.
it ended.
I really just like the party. I really just like nice Stamets. I think I said it last week, but like I'm totally happy with the lead engineer, egomaniac, being an asshole and a narcissist, and I really wish they had just left it at that.
Just left him like that.
Anthony Rapp plays that character so well.
He
plays
really
like
does.
the snarky narcissist. Like he does it so perfectly. I love watching this guy work. He's just such a I love the character, and they're ruining it with this thing where he's now like, you know, good old Stamets, you know, always there with a warm look and a pat on the back. And I just kind of like, what happened to the guy who was like, you're an idiot?
Yeah.
Slap.
It was like 2 episodes ago. That's what's like the turnaround has been so quick that it's almost unbelievable.
My question
The
is,
magic of writing.
what do you guys think when this show wraps? In the last episode, when Marina Sirtis and Jonathan Frakes get out of the holodeck and they're talking about their the discovery program that they just acted out, what are they going to say to one another? Are they going to like it, or are they going to give it 2 thumbs down?
I mean, there was interesting on-screen sex.
So I think Wesley programmed it. I think this is a Wesley Crusher program. And Riker's going to come out and Wesley's going to be like, what'd you think, Commander Riker? Was it good? And he's going to punch him. And he's going to, hey, don't do, no. Right. And then he's going to like hold him by the shirt and hit him again and again and again. And, then Riker's going to start crying and Beverly's going to rush down the hallway. Like, what are you doing, Will? And he's just going to be like hitting him hard. And there's like blood in his hand. He's crying. And it's this whole thing. And then Barclay walks out and he's like, I like the sex scenes.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say, like, I could see Riker walking out and then just like zipping up his pants and being like, "Yeah, it was pretty good, Wesley. It was pretty."
Yeah.
No, the best would be like wet that the doors close, and then all of a sudden he's like, "Wait, what's my mom doing in your holodeck program, Mr. Riker?"
My God, it was. I don't.
It's a terror. I mean, it's just this show is a nightmare. I hope somebody wakes up at the end of this season and it's like the whole thing was just a
dream, yeah, a nightmare.
fever dream.
I'm no longer going to predict anything because the one time my prediction comes true, it's the most ridiculous, depressing one. So I'm not going to do it again. I have a clip that I wanted to play that I just thought was hilarious and sums up how, I guess, inept the new Federation is supposed to be.
You're telling me these 3 ships were all destroyed by the burn at different times?
The difference is in millionths of a microsecond, but yes, there is a difference.
Son of a bitch.
That's it. That's the whole clip.
I do like the son of a bitch.
Somebody from 1,000 years in the past comes to your present and starts researching the important thing that's ever happened in your recent history. They gather some information, which let's just situate ourselves in this world. These are starships in the 3200s. or 3100s when the burn happens, I guess we're supposed to be led to believe. Right now, if you got a truck that is delivering Amazon products, you know what Amazon knows? Where your truck is. They track it. And that's part of logistics. You got to know generally where things are. 1,000 years after discovery, they don't have any idea where any of their ships are. And they don't even send any sort of, heartbeat pulse back to Starfleet headquarters somewhere where it gets recorded through relays. It's stored on a hard drive somewhere, so you know exactly when the ship exploded into a million pieces. So you don't do that. You have black boxes, apparently, for some reason.
I mean,
So every time a starship explodes, somebody has to sift through all of the debris to find the black box and plug it into the computer. All right, sure. So you never bothered to find any of the black boxes, even though every planet we go to, there is Starfleet garbage everywhere. There's ship pieces and old ships, and nobody bothered to get any black boxes until now. They were busy, but Discovery's not busy, so they got some black boxes. And then they did the most basic of math. Okay, there's a subtraction. We're gonna take the time code of when ship 1 exploded and subtract the time code of when ship 2 exploded, and they're not the same. And the Starfleet admiral, who's ostensibly in charge of everything, his response is, "Son of a bitch." Subtraction. Why didn't we think of that?
Why didn't we think to look for the ships? I feel like an idiot.
We've been so busy.
We were wasting our time on
100 years.
holographic flooring. We just thought that was going to look so cool and be really practical. And man, ships, every black boxes, dude.
Yeah.
I really think that this is sort of like the triangulation problem. Like, this is like when you try and talk about something that's in real Earth today. You're like, oh, everyone knows airplanes have black boxes. But like you said, Bert, modern airplanes have 5G connections. All of that stuff is instantly transmitted. You don't need to scrape them up, crashes anymore. All of that data is instantly transmitted because guess what? It's more secure that way. And also, again, if there's a tragedy, you don't have to dig through the middle of the ocean, which is very difficult to find. And say, like happened last year, if you get hit by a missile, it's actually super important to know exactly where you were at the exact time. We know that the Starfleet in the future does heartbeats. We know that, we've seen the War Council pictures where it shows everything in real time and them all fight. So we know that they are doing that. I guess we can say maybe because of the burn, they lost their computers and they had no backups. It's just, again, we're doing two problems at the same time. We're trying to make stuff easy for, real Earth people to compare to a black box.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just said cloud storage, is that really out of the scope of what people think these days? Call it something else. Oh yeah, our real-time storage data indicates this. I mean, I think everyone knows about real-time storage and clouds and stuff now. It doesn't have to be black boxes and triangles. I don't know. That's my hot take.
I kind of feel like in a realistic universe, this would have been solved like a year or two after the burn happened, right? They'd be like, you know what it is? We did we triangulated the all the ships and everything from when it happened, and here it came from this planet.
Yeah,
great.
Let's go see
Easy.
What's over there. No, nobody
Easy
cared.
peasy.
Nobody bothered until Michael Burnham.
Yeah,
it took her a year to figure it out.
Yeah, she was super quick. She figured it out, and of course she's gonna save the universe. She saved it before. She saved every living thing from control, and she's gonna save it again. The whole thing is just, these are the most important people that ever were. Obviously, saving the universe from control is bigger than anything. It's just such high stakes in this show.
Mm-hmm.
Control was gonna take over everything, everywhere. The Next Generation had a movie where they were like, hey, there's a planet with a little tiny colony of people who were living really long because of the rings around the planet, and someone wants to force relocate them. And our victory is stopping that forced relocation of like 1,000 people.
Yep.
Right? There's your victory at the end of the day. You know, Michael Burnham deals in, I saved you all, so listen up.
Right.
You know, like I hate that they've done that with Star Trek, that the stakes, all the stakes for everything are so impossibly high, right? Everything you do is saving the universe.
It's all a Thanos snap. Everything's a Thanos snap.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like I mean, like even like the highest stakes TNG, which I would say like Borg, like anything Borg related, right? Usually would never involve more than one planet at a time, right? They're going to attack Earth. First contact. The Borg are attacking Earth, right? We're going to save Earth, and we're going to save from a very small amount of Borg in the past. Like, so we got to save it. You know, like it's not what this show is, where it's like every week they save the universe, and they're going to do it again this season.
Yep.
They're going to save, you know, they're going to stop, they're going to reverse. I'm sure they're going to reverse the burn.
Oh, God.
The burn is going to get reversed. They're going to figure it out, and it's going to kick them into a new sort of like timeline for next season.
Yeah. But what are they going to do? What are they going to save the universe from next season? Like,
I hope they just get canceled.
What's left? How do you raise the stakes again? It's sort of like this show reminds me of an anime, but like a sort of kids anime where, you know, every season the bad guy has to have a new, more powerful form than the last one. And then they have to sort of figure it out. The good guy is going to get an even more powerful form than the other more powerful form. And then they have to go defeat that. But I mean, she saved the entire universe from a maniacal artificial intelligence that wanted to kill all life last season. And this season, she's going to save them from, you know, all of their everything exploding and, you know, being thrown back into the sort of spacefaring Stone Age. Like they're all... What was his name? Ephraim Cochrane. That's where they are now, and by next season they'll be back to, you know, 32nd century, super future space Trek, because I'm sure that the burn will be fixed and everybody will have a spore drive. But then what are they gonna do?
Yeah.
Like you can't lower the stakes now. I mean, what are you going to do to make it interesting? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I hear you, Bert, and I also am just on Team Jesse. Like, after they save the universe the 5th time, can they focus on an episode where they do science fiction? Like, oh, well, it would be cool if, like, there was this planet that, like, everyone didn't age, so they're thousands of years old, and we have to relocate them. It's like, oh, wow, so is this talking about modern day Palestine? Is it talking about like forced relocation historically on Earth? It is. It's talking about like 7 things at once, and also science fiction, because at the end of the day, we can be like, oh yeah, what would we do if we had to force relocate a bunch of people? And we can think about it, and it can be science fiction and maybe Discovery. I mean, we won't get there because they'll, like you said, they're going to have to save the universe again next season. And I agree with Jesse that it is definitely going to get canceled, so we won't get that far.
I mean, after the Grand Admiral Thrawn reveal this week, I don't care about any other sci-fi until I see his smiling blue face and red eyes. Who cares about Star Trek anymore? Star Trek's dead. I want like a meme of Egon Spengler from Ghostbusters when he says print is dead. Just saying Trek is dead.
Maybe we make it. Maybe that'll be our first merch. We make a shirt.
A T-shirt with Egon with Harold Ramis on it saying Trek is dead.
Yeah.
I picture like Janine now being like, I really like Star Trek. It's a great show. And it's like, Trek is dead. I just love all those diverse characters. Trek is dead.
Do you guys
next time?
Do you guys even want to watch? All right, we're gonna take a look at the.
I gotta kind of like take some of the moratorium on swearing off for this show. Like it's like I got a lot of cuss words in those show notes because it makes you want to cuss.
Well, I got the timestamp of the cusses down so that I can bleep them out easy. So don't worry.
Okay, fine. Bleep it out. Can you bleep them out with like TNG communicator like noises?
Yeah,
Like,
I'll figure out something cool to, to bleep them out with. All right. Anybody have any more points on this humdinger, or do we want to go to the preview for the next episode, which we've all committed to watching?
I want to hear, like, I think we should get someone on, like, once the finale rolls. I would love for us to do like a podcast with a fourth person who's like an apologist for this show. Someone who really, like, someone for whom this show, like, I've seen people on social media basically call this their favorite Trek. I would love to have a debate with them about why this is better than previous Star Treks.
I mean, I don't even know if I'd need to debate them. I just want to hear them. I just want to hear why. I just really would love to know what about this is such a draw to them, because I can't think of what it could possibly be.
I think it's going to be, I love the characters. I love the characters are so, like, their relationships really speak to me.
I think my hot take response to that, like, the people that love it, I mean, I hate to be the old guy on the internet that's like, they only love it because it's checking boxes. But to me, representation is very important, and I don't want to make it sound like it's not. Representation in AAA media, which this absolutely is, even if the writing is not great. It's absolutely AAA, prime time. Hundreds of millions of dollars have gone into this. And the cast is absolutely diverse. And I think that is something to be commended. And that's as far as I'll go with, like, the people that say it's their favorite Trek. I do think that for many of them, it's because it's the first Trek that maybe has characters that they can identify with. And also that Michael Burnham is a badass. I mean, we've said it like 10 times in the last few episodes, is that Michael Burnham is a badass, and she's much more of a badass than the leads of the other shows. And I think that's...
Yeah, you know what? I am all for representation, obviously. And I mean, again, I guess to some extent, I've probably been an apologist for different types of media in the past, because I've been in the position where, you know, I really want there to be Black people in science fiction and fantasy works. And I'm worried that, you know, if I don't support this work, whether or not I like it, that they won't make another one in the future and there'll be no more representation. And that's a difficult place to be in. I can understand that. So, but I mean, Michael Burnham is a badass, yes, but did she need to be a badass? I mean, does she? I don't know to what degree the representation excuses the bad writing, and it's almost like if you really were to sort of ask me how I feel about it, outside of the fact that I don't want it to ruin representation in the future and end up with, you know, fewer people of color and other underrepresented groups being included in AAA science fiction and fantasy shows. My feeling is that, you know, those things excluded, which are, you know, them being included, is great. It kind of not hurts, but it's a little bit insulting that, you know, yeah, we included all of these people from these underrepresented groups, and then we wrote a crappy show. You know, we saved the good writing for the other stuff, and we put the garbage here. So enjoy your garbage. You're in it now. Don't complain anymore. Yeah. That's almost the way I
think if you're going to have a show like that, you need to try harder. Like, you need to make it quality, right? Like, I mean, like, to me, this is the same discussion I had with people around the Ghostbusters movie, right? I was really excited. Like, Paul Feig's, I like the spy movie with Melissa McCarthy. It was funny. Like, he's like, Bridesmaids was funny. He had some nice outings, and then he goes and makes this, you know, female Ghostbusters movie that I was really excited for, and it was an absolutely terrible movie. It was so poorly written. Everything was awful. The one Black cast member is still the, like, only uneducated one. Like, it just, to me, it just boggled my mind that you could write such an unthoughtful piece of garbage, and then everyone who didn't like it got lumped in with the misogynists who were like, I don't want Ghostbusters to be girls. And it's like, no, I'd love for Ghostbusters to be girls, but would it hurt for it to be well written? right? Like, no, it would not. It would not hurt for it to suck. And we should be able to say, look, quit making crappy things and then slapping like diverse things in them so that we're like, we get guilted into not like when we don't like them, people are like, hey, guys, you know, like you should support this. You don't like it because you don't. No, I love those things. I love Michael Burnham. I love the characters. The first season of this show was fantastic.
It really was.
It's just really like every season since the first one has just sank deeper and deeper into, you know, a pool of turds. And I don't know how it's just spoiled it for everybody. And now, you know, your choice, like, I mean, you know what I mean? I just feel like, yeah, I don't want to be demonized because I don't like a show that's diverse, but then make it better, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I mean, the real danger to me is that this show gets canceled. I don't know who's watching or what the numbers are like, but I can't assume that they're fantastic seeing how the episodes have been going. The show gets canceled because people aren't watching, and that signals to the producers and the executives at the studio that, you know, these casts are not watchable. But, you know, people just aren't ready to watch a show with this type of cast. And so they don't get represented in the next Star Trek. And discounting the fact that, you know, the problem wasn't the casting, the problem wasn't the acting, the problem was the writing. And it's like, you can't write a bad show and expect people to watch because it's well cast representation wise. You still have to write a good show, and you also can't run away from difficult, you know, settings to write within, or coming up with complex thoughts and then portraying them or exploring them through a show by just blasting yourself into the future and giving yourself a free hand.
Yeah.
It's you know, free verse poetry versus writing within a meter and within a rhyming scheme. Just because you've taken away some of those limitations doesn't make whatever you write on paper poetry. It just makes it more difficult to write things that people recognize as good poetry. Like, you have to come up with your own idea now because you can't rely on the canon that's already existed.